Welcome to the March 19th, 2018 Kubernetes SIG Apps. I will be chairing this meeting. My name is Matt Farina. And to kick this off, I will drop the agenda and notes into chat here so everybody can see that. And if you want to add notes or details, please feel free to do so. The first thing we have is an announcement. Last I checked, the planned release date for Kubernetes 1.10 was March 26th, which is next Monday. It was supposed to be, or hopefully was today, and it seems that due to some other things, security releases, things like that, it did get pushed out, and there's some bugs and stuff we're still working on last minute. So that's the only announcement. Does anybody have anything else that needs announcing?
The apps repository is open now. There's some stuff in there, and we're ready to start opening issues and receiving feedback and helping build some stuff.
Yeah, this is for the application CRD. That CRD that we talked about that has metadata in it, similar to what is in a chart YAML file. Here is the link to that repo. If you're wondering why there is so much in there, a few weeks ago there was Kubi Builder was demoed, and it was talked about how to generate a controller and CRD and metadata from that. And as I understand it, that's what was used to build this. And so the structure and everything comes from that. So we've got that. Thanks for adding that in. And so with that, the next thing we have on here is a demo of Kubernetes and Service Catalog. Evan, are you on?
Hi there, can you hear me?
I sure can. And so with that, the floor is yours.
Great, okay. Let's get started. Let me just pull up some slides here. Okay, let's see here, sharing screen. Okay, can you all see my screen?
I can, yeah.
All right, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Evan Louie. I am a software engineer at Microsoft. And today I'm going to be giving a talk and demo about the result of some work that my team and I did with Adnan and his team in Bitnami, actually, on integrating service catalog functionality to Kubernetes. Adnan tells me that a couple of weeks ago, you all talked about service catalogs and service brokers in a more in-depth conversation. So I won't go too in-depth on that, but I will go over some general overview and terms, just so when we start the actual demo, you're not all, any of you who missed that aren't completely lost. So before our collaboration, we sort of had two things. We had the service catalog and open service broker, OSB, on one side, and Bitnami's Apps on the other. Two separate tools sort of living on separate ends of the Kubernetes tool shed. Service catalog and OSB, for those who aren't familiar, it's an API to manage off-cluster data resources in the context of a Kubernetes cluster. So what that pretty much means is that you're able to provision and manage data services in the cloud, all without actually leaving your Kubernetes cluster. And then we have Bitnami's Apps. I'm sure many of you have tried it before. It's Bitnami's web dashboard for managing and deploying Helm charts to your Kubernetes cluster. So what we wanted to do in this collaboration was to sort of integrate the service catalog functionality into Apps, because fairly often you're going to want to, if you want to deploy a production grade database to your cluster, you're most likely going to, well, many times you're going to want to use a cloud provider's serving. So just to give a quick rundown of the result, we went from a user experience that looked a lot like this. Hopefully you can all make that out. That's the, if you played with Service Catalog before, that's the svcat CLI tool. It gives you a basic interface for interacting with the service catalog. Right now in this example, you're seeing the available service classes from the open service broker on Azure. So we went from a user experience of this to something more akin to this. Hopefully you can make that out. You'll get a higher resolution demo of that once I actually start the demo. But we went to a much more web catalog view, something much more consumable to the end user. Yeah, and one last thing to cover before the demo are some basic terms. Just so if I throw these terms out during the demo, you're not completely lost if you're not familiar with service brokers. The Open Service Broker, OSB, that's the standardized API, which stands in front of all cloud providers now. Azure, AWS, GCP, we all have it. And that is talked to using the service catalog. The service catalog is what lives inside your Kubernetes cluster and translates Kubernetes resources into calls to the OSB. We have service class. This is a type of service made available from the catalog. So that could be MySQL databases, Postgres databases, Redis caches, list goes on. We have service plans. These are the actual instantiable units of a service class. So if you wanted to provision a MySQL database, it would have a bunch of plans varying based on storage capacity and DTUs. We have the notion of provisioning. This is the action of telling the service catalog to tell the OSB to give me an instance of a plan. We have instance. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's the provision instance of a service plan. And then we have the notion of binding. This is the action of the service broker telling the service catalog the credentials and secrets for an instance so that you can use it within your application. So without further ado, let's start the actual demo. Okay. So right now I'm in the directory of Kube Apps. I'm going to go /Kube. I currently have Kube Apps installed in my cluster. Let's go /Kube Apps dashboard to start the dashboard. Okay. Okay, so when we start up Kube Apps, we're greeted by the applications view. Currently, as you can see, I have one WordPress application installed. But before we start doing anything else, let's take a look into the configuration. Go into configuration and take a look. You'll see app repositories and service brokers. Let's take a look at our service brokers. You see we currently have OSB set up, the open service broker for Azure. Kube Apps currently expects you to install your service brokers prior to, or not prior, but outside of the actual Kube Apps experience. Managing and installing brokers is outside of the scope of Kube Apps, we felt. So I currently have one service broker set up, OSB. Let's take a look at our app repositories. We currently have 3 app repositories set up: Incubator, Stable, and the Service Catalog repository. These are the repositories that Kube Apps is going to draw its charts from for installation. So let's go back to applications. And let's say we wanted to deploy a new WordPress instance. So a new WordPress instance using a managed MySQL database. So in that case, we're going to provision a new MySQL database using Azure. As you can see, we currently have 2 MySQL databases set up off cluster right now, but let's provision a new one. Here. And here we see the screen that I showed in the slides earlier. Here you have a list of available service classes surfaced through the Open Service Broker for Azure. You'll have stuff ranging from container instances, Cosmos DB, MySQL, Postgres, Redis. It's a big list. So in this example, we're just going to provision a Azure database for MySQL. And here you'll see a list of available plans for the Azure MySQL class. So you'll see standard tier, basic tier, and a bunch of different specs for them, ranging on storage and DTUs. Here we're going to provision a standard tier with 800 DTU. And now you'll see the form to fill out to actually provision it. We'll give our service instance a name. So my brand new MySQL. We're going to provision to the default namespace, and then you'll see the list of available classes here and plan pre-selected. here are some basic parameters that we're going to be passing off to Azure as well. These are Azure-specific parameters right now. So that's going to be, this database will be provisioned in the East US data center and in the default resource group in Azure. So let's submit that. And then up right here. So now, as you can see, we have a third MySQL instance, and it is currently being provisioned asynchronously. So if we click into details, you will see a more detailed view as to what we just did. You can see the status of that service instance. So it's not currently ready, and it's currently being provisioned. You see the class and the plan that it has, and any available bindings for it. Because provisioning databases on Azure and well, in general takes a while, we're going to instead use some presentational magic and take a look at one of the databases that I provisioned last night. So let's take a look at my new MySQL. As you can see here, it is ready and provisioned successfully and currently has no bindings. As I mentioned earlier, creating bindings is the action of generating secrets so that your applications within Kubernetes can consume it. So if we're going to create a new WordPress, we're going to need some bindings. Let's create a binding. So we can go my new MySQL binding. Yeah, we're pointing it to that instance, this instance, and we're going to create the binding in the default namespace. Let's create the binding. Then as you can see, the binding's here, and the binding has been injected successfully. We expand it, and here you'll see the list of secrets that you will need to actually use the database inside your application. So now that we have the binding created, let's go back to Applications and click Deploy New App. We're brought to the charts view. These are the charts surfaced through the 3 app repositories we saw earlier. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see WordPress right here. So we click on WordPress, and if any of you have used Cube Apps before, this view is fairly familiar. We have the README, and we also have chart versions available for deployment. So you can click through these, and you can choose which version of the chart to deploy. So right now, we're just going to choose the latest. We're going to click Deploy using Helm. This is another function, another feature that we worked on with Bitnami. There's the ability to actually modify the package values.yaml file that comes with the chart. This was very important and makes using it a lot easier. So let's give our WordPress application a name. My new WordPress. Let's deploy it to the default namespace. And if you look through the values.yaml file, you'll notice that you can note an external database. To do so, you should tell the chart to not provision an in-cluster MariaDB. So set MariaDB to false. And under bindings on the right side here, you'll notice that we have a list of bindings currently in our cluster. My new MySQL binding, that's the one we just created. Let's click on that. And you can see the information is brought up on the right here. So all you need to do now is copy and paste them over to your actual values.yaml file. So your host, bring it over here. Username is your user. Password. Database. And that's it. You click submit. And the chart starts its deployment. Because deploying databases takes a while in the cloud, we're going to pull some more presentational magic and take a look at the WordPress instance that I deployed last night as well. So we're going to take a look at default my WordPress. This is the one that I deployed last night, and this is deployed using the exact same way that we just deployed the other one. So with a Azure MySQL service instance. And as you can see here, this has a service with two exposed endpoints. And you can see here additional information regarding the actual application. So now, if we click on this link right here, hopefully this loads. We have a brand new, fresh WordPress install running on an Azure MySQL database. So that pretty much concludes my demo. Give a special shout out to the people here. Wouldn't have been possible without them. And I'll open the floor to any questions. How do I get off this thing? Pause share, I guess. Yeah. Any questions?
So is the work you just showed off available in upstream projects for use today?
Available for upstream projects? Yes.
Like integrated into Kubernetes. So if we installed Kubernetes and got going with the service catalog for Azure, which we've demoed here before, if we start piecing that together, is all of this available to start using now or to start playing with?
Yep. So Kubernetes, this was made available in Kubernetes version 0.3, I think. Currently on 0.4. You just saw me working off master, but the latest release will have all the functionality that I just demoed.
Oh, the latest release that just came out, or the next one?
The current release will have everything I just demoed.
Okay, thank you.
So just to expand on that, the release that has this functionality in is 0.3.0, which is out as of about a month ago. And there's even a newer release, 0.4.0.
Great. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Joe was asking as well in the chat. Is there any way to have the stuff from the bindings auto-injected into the values? I saw you were copy and pasting. Is there any, I know Helm has a limitation, but is there anything you guys are planning for?
Yeah, this was a UX pain point that me and Adnan and the rest of the team are discussing, because there's no standardized way to, well, there's no standardized values.yaml file or no standardized way to map bindings to any particular YAML file. Like there's no name convention or anything like that. For now, it has to be a copy and paste job until we sort of reach that standardized way of exposing binding information inside a values.yaml file.
So we're working on the Helm 3 stuff right now. Are you at all plugged into the process to see if we can work something out in that? Because we're talking about some of those things.
Oh, I'm not plugged into that right now. I would love to get plugged in.
Okay, great.
I think one other thing to mention on that front is there's some work going on in SIG Service Catalog as well to try and solve this. Because one of the issues is that depending on what broker you use, you're going to get different, AWS might call it host name, whereas Azure calls it host, for example, in the secret. So how do you know what those keys are?
Exactly.
Is the main issue right now. So there's some work going on to create some sort of mapping in Service Catalog. So that might be, and essentially treating bindings kind of like persistent volume claims, so that the binding would just go and you could just say, I want a MySQL service, and then the cluster would know something that exists that can provide for that MySQL service.
Great.
It seems like it. I mean, just a bit of an outside comment, I guess, but it doesn't seem like it would be much easier if we just had a convention for these things versus providing layers and layers of configuration. I would think that it could be just a MySQL service in that namespace that the client is deployed to, and there could be a secret like just called MySQL perhaps, and that secret would contain 2 standard keys, like password and username. Why do we need extra layers of configuration? It seems not quite not doing us any favor, really.
Yeah, well, I guess it really does depend on what we find the easier job to be. Do we want to herd the cats, so to speak, when it comes to all the cloud providers to standardize on that? Or create another CRD to manage that for us, right? So yeah, what do you think, Adnan?
So I think one of the goals for the Open Service Broker spec, I think in the next version, is to have some sort of standard on what keys a MySQL service or common services should have. But until we get there, I think for version 2, there's probably going to need to be some sort of mapping between different brokers. But I think the idea would be that mapping should be either managed by the broker itself or by cluster operators, and an application developer only needs to create a binding that says I want MySQL, and then whatever the cluster operator has set up, similar to storage classes, I guess, it should just be able to find whatever is available in that cluster to go and provision.
So where are these conversations happening at, if somebody wanted to get involved?
So I think it's happening as part of SIG Service Catalog, which meets.
They meet Mondays. If you head over to k8s.io/community, you can find out when they and all the other ones meet too. All right.
And it also sounds like there's interest in SIG Apps about this, so I think it'd be good for someone to come and update what's going on there occasionally in SIG Apps.
Sounds good. I can take on a to-do to go chase somebody down on that.
Cool, and I'm pretty involved in that as well, so I'm happy to do that as well.
Oh, sure. If you want it, you got it.
Cool.
Thanks.
Delegation.
Delegation at its best. All right. This one a little longer than I expected, but we should probably jump on to the next things. Thanks, everyone. If you've got any more questions, please jump into the chat and continue to ask them. Great demo. Thank you. And so with that, we have Paris here from Contribax to give us an update. Paris, are you there?
I am here.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to everyone in SIG Apps land. I don't think I've been on the call in 5 months, so that I am actually intending on changing, and that's actually why I'm here today. For those who don't know me, I am a co-chair of Contributor Experience. Please disregard my hat. I am technically on PTO today, but I did not want to miss this. So first things first, I did drop a link in the agenda, and I did share it with the Kubernetes SIG Apps Google groups. So you should have access to what I'm talking about. But it is a very, very long, verbose doc that I'm not going to be able to get through in 10 minutes. But the intention with this is a roadshow of sorts that Contributor Experience is going to be doing now on a quarterly basis, and going to all of the SIGs, which is roughly 37 SIGs and working groups at this point, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the work that we're doing in Contributor Experience. It's very important that we're all on the same page for multiple reasons. But one, the most important, is that everybody on this call right now is considered a contributor in some fashion. So this is all very relevant stuff. And I know Matt and several other people in leadership, as well as just several of your members, have come to our meetings, talked about why and how we're changing things across the board and how we're communicating. And this is just really us just kind of making these connections. So what I'd like to do is just kind of blow through this really quickly. And if you have any immediate questions for me, shoot. But I'd really like you to take all of this information in, and then maybe I come back, or then maybe Matt or someone can come to one of our Contributor Experience meetings and then give any feedback, or we can even start a discussion on your mailing list, et cetera, et cetera. So first things first, this is something that always comes up with apps, especially Helm, and kind of how we do automation and workflow and why we're trying to change it across the board. One of our main reasons and goals in trying to change labeling and workflows and things like that across the board is so that our contributors have the same experience across repos. Right now in the Kubernetes organization, we're talking about 50 repos. So that is a lot. And we're noticing that if someone is contributing to one repo, it is highly likely that they're contributing to another. Whether or not they're contributing more than that is kind of I don't know, but it would be nice so that contributors have the same experience across the board with CI and things like that. For example, some of the recent things that we've been working on that, again, I think some of your folks already know is what exactly the explicit meaning of looks good to me is. The FADA-bot, which is the stale issues, label definitions across the board is something that we're working on right now. Like, what exactly does it mean when you throw down the help wanted label? Does that mean that it's a good first time issue for someone? Does that mean it's good for new contributors, or does it mean exactly what it says with please please current contributors come and help us with this. We need immediate help on this, which isn't necessarily great for first-time contributors. We've also been doing a lot with issue triage, and we're really wondering and curious what the thoughts are on applying current issue triage guidelines across all of the Kubernetes repo orgs. As I said before, the guidelines are included in the doc that I shared, so please feel free to take a look at that and give us some feedback on the issue itself. New labels, that's something that we're working on, identifying issues for closing so that we can do things like the stale bot, and this really is helping us with providing relevant stats on dev stats. And for those who have not seen dev stats yet, it's Kate's, I'm going to throw this in the chat right now, actually. It's kates.devstats.cncf.io. And that's where all of these metrics and things that are coming from. And so one of them, one of the dashboards actually is talking about labeling. So that's the need for us to kind of get our act together with labeling. And then kind of the most important aspect of this is how are you finding out about these changes? When we are making changes across the board, how are you actually finding out about this? And we laid this out in our charter actually just recently, and we thought that it was very important for us to lay this out so that we have consistency across the board. Again, because there are 37 SIGs and it's impossible for us to go to them all of the time every time we're making a change. So what we're going to do is we're going to lazy consensus this with a time box of at least 72 hours to first the contributor experience mailing list. So that's where we'll actually socialize it within our group first. And we'll also have a very specific subject line so that people can notice that this is a change that's coming out. And then once we socialized it and gotten the appropriate OKs from our group, then we're going to time box it again with a lazy consensus for at least 72 hours with the following mailing list. And that's what, excuse me, that's going to be contributor experience again. That's going to be SIG leads mailing list. And that's going to be the Kubernetes dev mailing list. And then after, with no objections, we're going to release and then announce it at the community meeting every Thursday in the announcement section. Or if we have a contributor experience update, then we'll do it there. So that's the communication channel, if you will, for us. So does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments about that? That's just kind of one of the chunks that I wanted to talk to you folks about today. No? Okay, cool. All right. And then the next thing is the charter, and it looks like that's awesome because it looks like you already have it on your agenda today. I just wanted to see if you needed any help with it. The steering committee did just release the SIG governance info that also includes facts. Links to that repo are inside of the doc as well. I also linked to ours so that you can view ours, and this is really just a way also for us to start establishing out more sub-projects. And that's something that we've done with a project Markdown file that I linked in there as well. All those projects are what contributor experience is working on, and that's how we're going to be chunking out sub-project owners. And those sub-project owners will be tied to owners files ultimately. And that is a good way for SIGs to really start taking leadership ownership as far as owners files are concerned. And that helps with current contributors figure out who to go to for what. So any questions about charter stuff? I know, like I said, I know that you're already talking about charter at a later time today for the agenda, but I can take any questions about that too. Okay, cool. Now, we do have a new version of the contributor guide. This is something that we've been working on for a long time. So we wanted to see if you could review it, make comments, poke holes at it. This is our first shot. We had lovely, lovely contributors help us with this, and we actually had a lot of new contributors help with this, which was awesome to get their perspective. And that really helped us with making edits and things like that. Now, a developer guide portion is coming to that. Both of these docs will actually be surfaced on a new contributor site, which I'll talk about in a second. But right now, they're actually being surfaced to kubernetes.io. And that's where that information will be populating. One of the biggest things that we've heard from those contributors is the discoverability of docs in the community repo is lacking. So this is our attempt to A, make those better, and B, make them more discoverable. So now if you do Google search, do some Google searches on things that are related to Kubernetes contributing, you should be getting first page results at this point for the correct information. So one thing in that same breath that we are trying to push is to make sure that all repos have contributing Markdown files that link to this main contribution guide, as well as any differences that repo has against that guide. So for instance, if your repo is using some other version of CI, then it should be indicated in your contributing Markdown file. If not, then it should just simply list the contributor guide link in your contributing Markdown file. We have taken some polls with new contributors, and they are indeed looking for contributing Markdown files in all repos, not just community repos. If anybody on the call needs a template, like I know Helm has a really great one, but if anybody on the line has a repo on the side and needs a contributing Markdown file template, we can help you. So just reach out. Now, next part is mentoring, and I know we do have quite a few SIG Apps folks helping us out with the incubation of some of these mentoring initiatives. All of the initiatives that I'm about to say are what I consider incubation stage. What that means is that we're trying them out. All of them are non-traditional. This is actually something that I'm talking about at KubeCon in Copenhagen. So quick plug for my talk. But these are all not traditional one-on-one where you stay with that mentor forever. These are new ideas that I'm trying to, like I said, incubate to see if it's something that we can do for the future that would help us scale. One of these things is called Meet Our Contributors. This is sort of a mentors on demand, if you will. So if you have a quick question, whether it's about your career, whether it's about your growth within the Kubernetes organization, whether it's about end-to-end testing, or if you want to know what Matt Farina does on the weekends, all of those questions are applicable, and that happens once a month, every Wednesday. There are 2 time zones. We've had 2 of them already, and they're actually really, really fun. We had 6 contributors on the first Wednesday of this month, and it was really, really fun. So if you would love to join that or watch it, please answer any questions in the Meet Our Contributors Slack channel. We'll also do a Twitter hashtag as well. But this is a really good way to promote your SIG and promote what you're doing too, because the questions that you're answering, you can tie into the SIG in your work, especially if you're looking for new contributors or even current contributors to come help you. So that's awesome. And then we also have Outreachy, which we have just completed our first semester, and that is a 3-month stipend. It's very similar to Google Summer of Code, except they specifically work with underrepresented folks, whereas Google Summer of Code doesn't necessarily. But this is helping us target new contributors of a diverse background, and B, it's giving them a stipend to do the work, which is very helpful with underrepresented folks per research on why they don't contribute. So since we're now over, the next semester starts in the fall/winter. So the call here is more like, if you are a sponsoring organization that would like to help us out with this, Google and CNCF helped us out this last semester. But if you are a sponsoring organization or would like more information, to reach out to me, or if you'd like to sponsor a project. So like I mentioned before, we are doing Google Summer of Code. That is underway right now, and they are currently collecting applicants for that. But that's shut down for any new projects or anything like that. So they are in the heat right there. Now, group mentoring, this is something that is targeting all contributor ladder levels, and it's really taking a lot of peer mentoring concepts and pairing them with some of the scalable infrastructure that we already have, which is Slack, and putting people together that are all on the same ladder level. So for instance, members currently who are all looking to be code reviewers, and taking them and seeing if we can elevate and escalate their time to that reviewer level. Right now we are in a test case with that. The test case is wrapping up here shortly in the next couple of weeks. And from that test case, we know that we're going to have at least 3 people graduate, which is great. One of the things that we learned is that we are not going to do group mentoring across time zones. That has been our major killer. But I really just wanted to launch the test to see what it looked like and how we could operate this, because group mentoring is not a concept that is familiar in open source territory. And so this is kind of what I'm placing a lot of bets on how we can scale fast in areas that need that kind of scale. So if you are on the call and you are interested in this kind of a program, I am going to whip together another cohort here shortly. But this cohort is going to be new contributors to members. I'd also like to spin one up for reviewers to approvers as well. And the cool thing about group mentoring is there is no start date. There are no like hard rules necessarily. So this means that we can spin up groups at any time, anywhere. And these groups are, at least 8 people. So that's where the scale idea is coming from. And then now we have also a proposed buddy program. The name is definitely TBD there. But the idea here is to kick it a little bit more traditional with that one-on-one approach, but it's a one-time, 1-hour deal. So if Matt Farina signs up to be a mentor for this, he knows his expectations are 1 hour, 1 month, and he would be doing whatever activities he signed up for. So whether that's pair programming or an Ask Me Anything session or a code review session, then he knows that that's what his expectations are. And then the person on the other end would have to mold their goals and objectives around that 1 hour session. So that's something that we're going to try to roll out within the next 2 weeks as well. And then I'm almost done, I swear on my life. That ended the mentoring section. Slack maintenance. I know Slack is a very hot topic in our group right now, but regardless of whether or not it's a hot or cold topic, Slack maintenance is very important. That's actually how we're onboarding a lot of new people into our projects. I looked at the data last night, and we onboarded 2,000 people in the last 30 days on Slack alone, which is huge. That's a 9% difference, which is, again, huge. So things like, do you have important docs pinned to your channel? Do you have a purpose description? This is important because new people will be able to pick things up a lot faster. We also have Slack guidelines now. We have a Slack admins channel. Please join us if you need anything at all. And feel free to pin things like charter, meeting notes, agenda items, etc. That really helps out other people try to figure out what's going on in your groups. And then office hours. Office hours is for users. It's something that we do once a month as well. It's this Wednesday, and George Castro with Heptio runs that. And we're always looking for new folks to help field questions. This is a great way for you to get in contact with your user base and other people that are using Kubernetes that are having questions. A lot of these questions we actually pick up as routine questions, and then George saves those so that we can try to improve the docs in that area. And that is it. Oh my gosh, that was so long-winded. I'm so sorry. This is only hopefully a one-time thing. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, if you have feedback on what we're doing in contributor experience, or if you hate some of it, or if you love it even, please let us know. We want to make this a great experience for current and new contributors. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Paris? I'm taking silence as no. All right. Paris, if you actually want to stick around, we do have a charter we're going to talk about that's actually in a doc based on the template. That's what we're going to come up to here in just a minute. So thank you, Paris. Then we'll get on to a number of updates from some of the different projects if we have them. And so the first, we'll start with the Kubernetes Core stuff. Do we have any updates on sets or jobs?
Yes. So for 1.10, there will be a new alpha feature for using default scheduler to schedule daemon set pods. And that's it.
For jobs and cron jobs, there's some work planned for 1.11 mostly. Actually, we'll be rewriting the cron job controller to use the shared informers, so hopefully that should improve the performance of the controller. And for jobs itself, mostly bug fixing and yeah, pretty much, and some code cleaning. That's it.
Was that scheduling for daemon set pods or stateful set pods?
You mean, for sets, it's for daemon sets.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes. If you're playing around with it, I would wait until next Monday to play around with it. If I understand it, there's some bugs in it that are being worked out this week, and it's an alpha feature only. You have to turn on alpha feature stuff while they work through this. But the idea is to, the daemon set scheduler, daemon set has scheduler code in it, and we'd like to consolidate that down is what some of the scheduling folks would like to do. And so this is work being done to head in that direction.
Yeah, so it's, like Matt said, it's enabled alpha, meaning that it's not enabled by default, and only the daemon set scheduler for the core workloads API went around the default scheduler anyway, so it doesn't affect stateful setter deployment or anything else. You can play around with it, and the main use case is that we needed to do this. Well, this was one path to supporting priority and preemption, and in order to deconflict the daemon set scheduler's interaction with the default scheduler, this was the path that was taken. So the bug fix was merged, I believe, today. So it should probably be available on head and somewhat functional today if you do want to play with it.
All right. So if there's nothing else on sets or jobs, we will jump into the SIG charter because we're a little short on time here. We got about 13 minutes left and we want to get through that. There's a link here to the charter. Let me share my screen real quick and we can, I want to maybe highlight this for a minute and talk through it, and then we can make any decisions on it next week. Let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so this is the charter. It's linked in the document. I've highlighted and commented on the areas that we've changed or decisions that were made. Some of us discussed it throughout the week, but really there were only a few of us who did any of the discussion on it. So we would love more input and feedback, whether it's a comment, a thought, or anything like that. There's the default template for charters, and I'll talk through here real quick on what we deviated from. Really, the template talks about governance, and it doesn't include a section for scope. And so what I did was I copied over the current scope from the README to stick scope into the charter as well as governance. And that's the first thing. This is just a straight copy and paste from what's in the README today. There is an option to have, so we've had what we called SIG leads for a while, and the charter kind of breaks this up. There's chairs who kind of oversee it, which is pretty much what we've done in the SIG lead role in SIG apps anyway. And then they add an optional role for a technical lead, and then there's sub-project owners. And we've really had lots of sub-project owners and then wrangling by the leads, but we've acted more in a chair role. And so in this, it kind of changes what we've done to chair. It formalizes how folks come into being, how many there are, all of those details. I lined out the SIG technical leads because really the way we've operated is the owners of the sub-projects have been the technical leads for their sub-projects, and we didn't see a need to add or change anything between chairs and that or in any other capacity. And so that's just because it's optional, we lined it out because we don't need it. On the sub-projects, the one change we made to the sub-projects was to say 15 as a possible set of owners, because the reality is we have over 10 on a couple of sub-projects today. Now that number may need to be adjusted and accommodated, but that 15 was just bumped out to not say unlimited, although we could probably have a discussion on whether there should be unlimited or, you know, where does that come from? And that's the number because a couple of them have like 10, 11, 12. And so thoughts totally open to whatever. Should we drop the max? Should we not? There is this identification of somebody who's a member in all of this. This is part of it, and I would love for folks who are here to maybe give their 2 cents on it, because I know we have a whole lot of people who drive by or attend the meetings and whatnot. And if anybody has comments on what it is to be a member, and we don't do really much with that at the moment, but there might be things in the future that take advantage of this. And so it would be important to get 2 cents on. The other things, let's see. Sub-project creation. All right. So one of the things that we did here was there were 2 options, one by federation of sub-projects and all their owners, and then the other was by technical leads. And we didn't have technical leads, so I changed this to say chairs and instead of federation of sub-projects, because if you look at all of the sub-projects owners we have across all of the sub-projects, we're probably talking 30-some people, and that's a lot of people to get together to try to make any decisions on creation of sub-projects and repos and things like that, who have very different concerns. And so this was stuck in here as a spitball, but if people have other ideas on how to change this, please do. This is pretty much how we've operated today. And of course, we always try to do lazy consensus. The other thing we've updated is they can be created by kept proposal with a fallback to majority vote. So look at how the sub-projects are created. But really, this was just a tweak to what we've done today, because trying to get together all the sub-project owners to talk about how to create another sub-project is just a complicated task for a SIG our size. But please, if you have ideas, I would like something better. We also added a section in on sub-project retirement. And this is something I was asked to do a PR back to the template on, and I still owe folks on that. And then there is the technical process. There were some changes that were made to the technical process here for proposing and making decisions on those, because a lot of the sub-projects we have don't follow the typical sub-process you might if you were just created in the Kubernetes sense. Helm, charts, compose. A lot of these don't follow the normal standard way about going with things. And then the other thing was at the bottom here, issues involving, since there aren't technical leads, we updated that to just say chairs. And really the way we have been doing that is we just try to sit down and get folks together and work on some kind of consensus. We've never really had to do anything other than that, because most of the projects are at the end of the day owned by their owners, and it hasn't really been an issue. And so this is the updates from the templates. Otherwise, it generally follows the short template that's been proposed and been merged into the community repo. My hope is, because I'd like to get to some of the other stand-ups here real quick, that we can review it. Y'all can review it, add comments in here as you see fit, ask questions, and then maybe next week we can give a little bit more time and a lazy consensus vote on it, if that's all right. Does that sound acceptable?
Sounds good to me.
All right, fantastic. Folks, please give your 2 cents. We are asking for color of the bike shed comments, so please give your 2 cents. With that, we can move on to stand-ups. We've got a short period of time, so let's try and make it quick if we can. Anybody here want to talk about Helm?
I was just waiting for someone else to respond, but I can respond to that. Not too much from Helm side over here. There was 2.8.2 was released last week, and there's a couple of good fixes that were in there. So if anyone is on 2.8.0, 2.8.1, please upgrade to 2.8.2. Otherwise, steady as she goes until Kubernetes 1.10 is released, and we'll go with Kubernetes 1.9, I guess. Helm 2.9.
I'll also throw in here that 2 documents have kind of come up in the last week, the user stories and design proposal for Helm 3. So folks interested in that, I'll drop a link into chat here. You can read about where Helm 3 is talking about going right now. Does anybody want to here to talk charts? All right, I guess I can go a little bit. Charts is moving along at a breakneck pace. We've had lots of merges in the last month. We've had well over 300 PRs merged. We're probably getting just under 100 a week right now. So things are moving at a pretty good pace. There have been a couple of changes and proposed changes to CI to kind of add more detail when CI fails, so we can understand what's going on. We also have a whole lot of comments or a whole lot of spelling fixes and grammar fixes coming to chart. So if you see that the PRQ is kind of high right now, that's probably because there's 20 or 30 or maybe even more that are just language fixes within the charts themselves as folks go through and nitpick on those. That's kind of what's going on there.
I'd also add that one of the things that we're doing right now, or specifically Reinhard is doing, is adding support to have custom YAML files going through CI. So if there are particular values that are required, we can still make the CI pass with dummy values or something that would allow it to pass and test that. Because right now that's not really possible for required Helm values.
Awesome. Yep. Chart Museum. Josh, you were on. Did you want to talk Chart Museum?
Yes. So we have, I brought this up a bit in the Helm Dev call. We have a first version of multi-tenancy, which means you can run, I haven't tested unlimited, but unlimited amount of Helm repos with one Chart Museum instance. So it's a little bit limited right now, but there's some instructions in the README if you want to try it out. There's also discussions around authentication. So if you have strong opinions on how authentication in chart repos should work in general, come join us. And some of this is going to kind of tie into the Helm 3 talks as well. So yeah, that's it.
Fantastic, thank you. Kube Apps, do we have anyone on who wants to talk about that?
Yeah, I can give a quick update. So we're working on integrating kubeless, the function platform, serverless platform for Kubernetes into Kube Apps. So right now it's kind of a loose integration, so we're trying to integrate it more, and hopefully have a release for that by the end of the week. Other than that, just try it out, give us feedback.
All right, the application CRD and controller. Ken, are you on? Oh, we may have lost Ken.
No,
so
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here. Okay. So the repo is open. I'm going to start opening some issues to continue discussions. I'd really love to get feedback from some of the Helm maintainers in terms of what else we feel like needs to go into the CRD, or if there are things that we think should be removed. For this, I took a minimal subset of what people had kind of agreed upon based on the CAP, and tried not to include things that were contentious. And then I want to open issues up to discuss the more contentious points and come up with the right solution as opposed to just a solution. So it's there, and whenever people want to start perusing through it and giving feedback, that'd be great. I am going to have to probably make some modifications based on updates to Kubi Builder in the near future. And Kubi Builder is now an official sub-project of API Machinery. So access to that for everyone should be a lot easier. Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, that's what we have. We had another discussion topic for the application CRD metadata. There's a whole bunch of metadata in that we wanted to kind of walk through and get to, but it doesn't look like we're going to get to it this week. So next week's a discussion topic week. I moved the discussion there along with the SIG charter, and so we can chat about that next week. And so we got a minute left. Did anybody have any final parting words?
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks first. Thanks everyone for coming, and have a wonderful week. We'll be back here next week.
Yay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.